Hey man,
What's up, man?
how's everything?
It's good. You?
Good. So, looking forward to talk to you.
Yeah, me too, brother.
Is it a busy day?
No, we're in the off season right now, so weekends for the most part are off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sorry for bothering your day off, man.
Oh, no. This is perfect because then I don't have to rush and I don't have to be anywhere. So I'm just enjoying some coffee and hanging around the house.
Cool. I basically just read all the things on your Instagram and heard the podcast you did. But still, can you introduce yourself for the coaches in Taiwan?
Yeah, I'm Claus Souza. I'm a performance coach or strength and conditioning, whatever you want to call yourself. I don't really get too hang up on titles. I've been a strength and conditioning coach now for probably 13, 14 years maybe. And currently work for the Denver Nuggets in the NBA. You know, I had some stops in the collegiate realm in the United States at Auburn women's basketball. I did also work in the WNBA for a couple of years. And then, worked with an array of sports when I was in grad school, American football, tennis, golf, track and field, and have a heavy background in martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. Lived in Canada to get my first degree, my bachelor's. And at the time, also worked with an array of sports there, hockey players, volleyball players, general population a lot too. So that's probably the summary. I was born and raised in Brazil, actually, but I moved to Canada 15 years ago. Yeah.
That was cool.
Wow.
So, I heard a story about you will probably end your career at the Auburn College, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you tell everyone about the story?
Oh, I think I know what you're referring to. It was just a hard time in my life where I was like, well, not necessarily hard because hard is subjective, but it was a time where I didn't think I was a good coach. You know, I wasn't getting a lot of buy-in from the athletes, and I just thought I wasn't the right fit for the situation. And I realized that at the time, I was like, maybe I should just, exit strength and conditioning and try to find something else to do. But through a bit of an epiphany with martial arts, I discovered that every situation has a way out, and you can better your situation by looking at the details and trying to fine tune with the information you're acquiring through those experiences and situations. So I just made basically like a parallel learning between martial arts and the hardship that I was getting from my current fulfillment in the strength and conditioning world. And I realized that it wasn't, the situation's fault. It was the way I was perceiving the situation that was the fault. And the moment I changed my outlook on things is when everything, started feeling much better. And I felt like I overcame a problem. And then I realized that maybe I'm not that shitty of a coach.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're definitely not a shitty coach. Otherwise, you won't be helping with players in WNBA or NBA right now.
I think it's that doubt that every professional has,
For sure.
that you're like, am I doing what's best for the athletes? Do they like me or not? I think that plays a role. And then it's just kind of figuring yourself out a little bit. And when you think you think that you're just good, that's that's when it's a problem. I think I'd rather feel like I'm not really good, then at least that gives me a feeling of, you know, I'm going to keep pursuing to sharpen my sword and become a better coach.
So does that, so even now when you like working like NBA Denver Nuggets as a strength coach, do you still have that kind of like doubt?
Yes, I do. And not even a doubt in like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but mostly like, do I know enough to help the athletes? You know, it's more specific at this point. You know, like I know where I stand as a person. I know where I stand as a professional, but I feel like the field is so young in strength and conditioning and still evolving so much that am I staying on top of, you know, the information? Am I developing myself as a coach in order to help the new generation of athletes? I think that's more, not necessarily a doubt, but like a pursuit.
So working at the NBA, I know there's gonna be like so many things, and it's gonna be a busy schedule. How do you like consume all these new knowledge?
That's actually a great question, and I appreciate you saying that because it is a lot of time consuming, but it's also not. And what I mean by that is you're available to go on the trips and on the games and all that stuff, but you have a lot of time, you know, in the bus, in the plane. You have a lot of time where you're waiting for you to leave the hotel to go to the game, for example. And those are times where you can maximize a little bit of the learning itself. And hopefully I'm not going to sound contradictory right now, but a lot of the learning is not even just to consume the information that's being put out there, because there's so much, but it's consume the information, absorb the information, and apply it to your situation, and how can you use that with your athletes. You know, I feel like there's a lot of coaches out there that just want to say they did X, Y, and Z course, and they sign up for the, you know, PMN mentorship, and they have all these things, but are they really absorbing the information? Are they really using for their situation? And are they applying that the correct manner? Right? I think we all know this, and you're pretty experienced with your athletes. You can't just come in and change everything. You know,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of time. It takes time for your athletes to understand your expectations. It takes time for your athletes to figure out how you do your programming, etc. So it's very important to consume the knowledge, absorb it, read it, but kind of put it somewhere in here and use it whenever you think it's necessary and you see fit, and make small nudges and changes over time versus, oh, I just read a book over the weekend, I'm going to change everything. You know, the reality is a little different than that. And I like to say, like, I love when strength coaches, like, they post a picture of a book and they're like 20th book done of the year, and it's like February, you know. I was like, wow, this person is a voracious reader, good for them, but like, what are you doing with all this information, you know? And I think, I don't like the word hack, but I like the word connection, and I like the word of, you know, not the word, but the phrase of, like, call the people you respect and pick their brain, and then be like, hey, have you looked into this? And they're like, oh yeah, we're messing with that as well. And that's when you kind of like start, you know, like, oh, okay. That's what I mean by consuming knowledge and trying to stay on top of things.
That was cool, because that's kind of like the main reason I started to do this. It's because, like, like 2 years ago, the COVID-19 happened, right?
Yeah.
And couldn't travel, so like there's not like any courses or like mentorship gonna happen in Taiwan. So trying to find my way to like reach out to great coaches like you, like Coach Boo, to like learn stuff.
Absolutely. I think what you're doing is genius and smart, you know, because you're getting high-level professionals to talk, and it's just it's a great way to, you know, just pick their brains.
Appreciate it. So, this one is also from the other podcast and your Instagram that you mentioned, like warm up is like I forgot the card or like
a business card.
Yeah. Business card. Sorry, my poor English.
No, you good.
So, I heard the story still, but still want you to like talk to the coaches about why is like warm up so important, and how does that help you as a strength coach to like proceed your career?
So it's funny, like when I was a grad assistant, we had to kind of rehearse this warm up for American football, right? It was every day, it was the same thing. And we would expect a certain behavior from our players. You know, they had to like talk to us throughout the warm up. They had to sound off, you know, help us with the count. And it was an interactive way. And it really like, I hate it because I'm not good at memorizing. Like, I like to understand things and then kind of throw a little bit of my interpretation to it. I think that's the best way to approach it. But every time you need to memorize things, if you don't use it often, you forget it. And with that warm up, it was interesting because it taught me how to organize a larger group of people and try to keep everybody in some sort of sync. And kind of like where you can watch the athletes and at the same time still get the job done, which is to warm them up. But at the same time, I caught a lot of heat for messing up the warm-up often, you know, because it had to be memorized. And I was like, I don't know what the next movement was. And I'm trying to look at the sheet. And, you know, I could see that the guys were like kind of like laughing, and I would get nervous and et cetera, et cetera. And then I was like, this is stupid. Like, why do you have to memorize the warm-up? And I tried to fight it. But then I realized that, like, all right, whatever, like, just memorize the warm-up, get it done. And then once I knew the warm-up, I started putting my own interpretation to it. And then the guys really liked it. And it was almost like it was easy because I knew the warm-up in and out, and the guys were starting to buy into the idea and the excitement and all that. And a few times, and then fast forward, right? So this was the beginning. So fast forward to other opportunities. I was warming up a tennis team one time on a tennis court, and an athletic trainer saw the warm-up. And then later on that day, she came over and asked if I wanted to interview for a job, right? But she had never seen me coach. She only saw me coach the warm-up. And that's why I said that the warm-up is a business card, right? Where like you get a little snippet of what you are as a coach, your interaction with the athletes. And then even funnier than all this is that a second time in my career, I got the opportunity to warm up another team. And after that warm up, a coach came and approached me and asked if I want to interview for this other job. So it sounds silly, but 2 times in my life, I did a warm up, and then later it got the conversation rolling for an opportunity of a job in the future.
That was great.
No. And honestly, this is probably like too much in depth, but I cannot not speak in depth at times. But the warm-up, especially for us strength coaches, right, we complain a lot that we don't have enough time with our athletes, right? Especially here in the U.S. I don't know about your situation, but like coaches they make practice too long. Athletes are too tired. We can't train them after. The demands of NCAA don't allow us to lift as much as we want in season. With kids' schedules nowadays, they have tutoring, classes, this and that, practice, and then lift is always like only 30 minutes and it's not enough and all this. Well, the common time I found where I always have the athletes, and for the most part, I'm giving the time, is the warm-up, right? So especially in basketball, most teams at least will give you 10 minutes before practice for you to warm up the team. And that's where I think you can make a big impact. Because think about it. If you're lifting kids, let's say, two 30-minute sessions a week, that's 60 minutes of training. And if you have, let's say, 5 practices a day and they give you 10-minute warm-up, that's an extra 50 minutes at the end of the week, right? So you had 1 hour of training combined, and now you have an extra 50 minutes of training. If you treat your warm-up as a training block, right? And that's where I start kind of geeking out and getting a little excited about the warm-up itself, because you could break it down. Like if you do 10 minutes on Monday, you could focus, and let's say they played on a Sunday, and then you have a warm-up on a Monday, like maybe that warm-up can be more focused on regeneration and recovery, right? You can do more cyclical movements. You can do more things that will get the blood flowing. Let's say you play Thursday, so maybe you'll warm up on Wednesday. It's more like a ramp up, like a more of an activation, CNS prep, where you do maybe some broad jumps, some more heavier plyos, or you do some sort of like med ball throws. And all of this could be implemented, with proper organization. You can implement that within those 10, 15 minutes of warm up that you have. And that's the other thing too. Like you go to your coach and you're like, hey, I want to add a whole another lifting session. They might be like, oh, we can't do that. But if you say like, hey, instead of 10 minutes, can we do 12-minute warm-ups from now on? And they'll be like, why? I was like, I need those 2 minutes. But they're not 2 minutes. At the end of the week, there'll be an extra 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? So it's just a way to kind of like, we complain we don't have enough time. And I'm like, all right, what is the time that I currently have that I'm not fully using? Because a lot of times people will just do the same warm-up and kind of go through the motions. But I feel like the athletes appreciate when you come with different ideas every day. So does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, for sure.
Okay.
So since the warm-up is so important, is there like anything you do like specific that makes it so special?
It's not about, because the specificity of the warm-up, that actually sounds kind of funny, but it's like every warm-up should have the phases where, you raise your blood flow and heart rate, you potentiate and activate your body. But within those categories, what you can also do is implement things like you can have a day that's focused on, let's say, single leg stability. You can have a day that's focused more on lower body mobility. You can have a day that's focused more, let's say, on upper body mobility, right? And you can slice those things, and maybe your warm-up is 12 minutes long, where, you use 5 minutes to, get your basics of the warm-up, your dynamic prep or whatever you want to call it. And then your last 7 minutes are the part that's more specific. And this got to happen quick because you don't have time to explain a lot of things because, you're on the clock. But I also think that, even if your athletes get 2-3 sets of something really good for that day, it's great. Like I think you mentioned something about, I feel like you like a lot of the, high intensity sprints, in season to maintain, hamstring health and to keep your athletes potentiated. And the importance of like, reaching those high threshold motor units in season, because a lot of times you don't lift enough, right? So sprinting is a great bang for the buck here. So why not do after the 5-minute warm up, you know, and then you do a couple more like 3-minute activation, and then you finish with 2-3 quality reps of, let's say, like a 3/4 sprint on the court, you know, where like athlete, maybe the first sprint is at about 75%, second 85, third, hopefully he's getting to a 90, you know, and then now they're ready to go for practice, which is the original goal, which is what, right? You want to warm them up and they're ready to go. But within that warm up, you also got a lot of training done. And let's say if you do sprinting, let's say 2 good reps twice a week, that's 4 great reps at the end of the week, right? So like you do that 2 weeks, that's 8 good sprints, right? You did 12, 16 good sprints at the end of the month. If you do that per month, and now you start reaching some loads plus whatever they do in practice and on your training, and now you can start to like figure out a little bit where you at. And then maybe you're like, oh, we need more. Or wait a minute, the warm-up takes care of all of this. I don't need to implement sprints post-practice. Right?
Cool. So since you brought up like sprinting, and there's some posts on your Instagram that talks about like sprinting, how do you like, I know you just mentioned like there's going to be like maybe like 2 or 4 sprints a week, but still, how do you program sprinting for a basketball player, and how was it different than like really track sprint?
That's a good question as well. I think it depends, right? Based on the load of each guy and how much they're playing. But majority of basketball per data is not reaching full speed, right?
Yeah.
It's just what the data shows us. So it's very important for us to reach a couple of high speeds at least once a week. And honestly, like we talk about the minimum effective dose, and I think that's a good terminology and a starting point. But I think 3 to 5 sprints a week where you're getting like the athlete really going, I think that's the sweet spot right there. And again, so the second part of your question was about, you know, the difference between track and field sprinting. It's like in power sports, and what I mean by power sports is like sports that have a lot of change of direction, and they gotta stop, redirect, and accelerate again. It's way different than just, you know, running laps on a track or just reaching top speed. Because when you do change direction, you're not going to reach a lot of top speed at all, for the most part. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But, you know, and there's way more things like shuffling, backpedaling, turning around. So it's like, we should probably also focus on those qualities versus just the straight ahead sprinting. And what I like a lot is the concept of most of our guys, they run linear down the sideline, but their heads are turned because they're looking where the ball is coming from, right? Or they're running with one hand up, signaling like, throw me the ball. Meanwhile, the opposite arm is doing the running mechanics. So, you know, and Franz Bosch talks a lot about that stuff where are you training your athletes sprinting, right? Because it's a sprint because from an effort standpoint, are they reaching top speed? Probably not. But are you working on the mechanics of running with your opposite arm overhead extended? You know, are you running looking to the right or looking to the left? Are you doing this mid-run? You know, because I think that is also very important when it comes to like talk about sprinting or speed work for a power sport like basketball or soccer, or if you're looking at, you know, pure speed when it comes to like track and field athletes, which by any means, like you had Boo Schneider here, you had Derek Hansen here. Like like these guys are the gods of this stuff. And, you know, they're way more educated than me to talk about that. So.
No, you're cool.
But I like when you say consuming knowledge and like learning, like I'm reading Derek Hansen stuff, you know, like I'm reading Boo Schneider stuff. Like it is what it is. Like the guys are the experts for a reason. So
cool. So next thing I want to talk about is like the mid-rep pause, which I find is like very interesting.
Okay.
So like if it's like programming for basketball player, how and why you're gonna use it? Or yeah.
Let me just make sure we're talking about the same thing. Are you talking about like let's say on a squat, am I pausing at the end range of the motion, or are you talking about literally mid rep?
Mid rep.
So
like
go ahead, describe it.
Not on the bottom. Like mid rep.
Okay, so we haven't messed with that a ton, like especially in the NBA. But I play with that myself, and I see the importance of it. Right. From a motor control standpoint, the way we view it is, if you can control the load at a slower pace or speed, then you can control the load, hopefully, on the court at a higher speed. Because, like, you got to crawl before you can walk, right? So if you can control that mid-rep, pause it, finish the rep, and then drive it back out, what you're teaching yourself is basically just to control the load. And I think that's vital for any athlete, really, which is also like why it's so important to hit pauses at the bottoms of the ranges of motion, right? On the eccentric portions. And then again, like Cal Dietz, triphasic, there's so many avenues you can go with, but it's like if you can sustain the load at a disadvantageous positions, then you're prepping your athletes to be more successful when they encounter those situations on the actual court or the field.
For sure. So, the way I saw the mid-rep pause, it's kind of like deceleration on the court. Not really that the movement is like, but the way it's like pause it, like maybe like quarter squat, then going down to the half and pause it there. It's kind of like deceleration, right?
100%. That's a great way to put it too, because it's more like it's almost like, I'm trying to make an association here, but it's a change of direction in the weight room.
That's
right?
Cool. Yeah.
Like you're not doing agility drills in the weight room, but you're like it's a change of direction within a lifting movement.
That was really cool. Never thought of that. So
there you go.
Cool, man. So cool, man.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
See, coaches helping coaches.
Yeah. Appreciate it. So much for the mid-rib pause. Next thing I want to talk about is like tennis ball game.
Okay.
And you hashtag it like small-sided game.
Mm-hmm.
So for like basketball player, how would you like program like small-sided game? I know it depends.
Yeah, I know. That's my favorite answer. Everything depends, right? But I think life is like that. So if you're, let's say, if someone is coming back from an injury, right, you'll probably be smarter for them to start on a 3-on-3, type of scenario, or even like a 1-on-1 with a little bit of like impact. So it's not a full 1-on-1, but it's like a guy just kind of like being there as a shadow where you're like replicating the movements of the court. It's very specific because you're actually playing the game, but there's not a lot of resistance. And then the next step would be, you know, you put someone in front of that person that's actually guarding them and not letting them get by. And then you can add a 2-on-2 half court, right? And you can do different scenarios on how you slice the court with that. You can just stay on the right side, you know, and all the action got to happen on the right side of the paint. Or you can do the same thing where it's like after 2 dribbles, the whole court is available or the whole paint is available. So it's very specific to the situation itself, right? If an athlete is, let's say, hasn't played in many months, right? It's probably better so the load is not too.
Yeah, no worries,
I had a reminder
no worries.
on my phone. So, for example, if an athlete hasn't played in a long time, right, you should probably not start full court. Why? Because the load might be too high for the condition of the athlete. So maybe it is smarter to start small-sided games where you're doing 3-on-3, 2-on-2, or whatever. Maybe you're doing in a way where, like, if the goal is to increase the conditioning, maybe you got to do something where the athlete's got to touch the half-court line and jump back into defense, right? There's, like, multiple ways to look at it. And then as they, you know, increase their load a little bit, playing 3-on-3 for a few days or whatever, or a week, depending how much time you have to plan, now maybe you can start opening for full court, right? And if the goal here is to just increase, let's say, conditioning, you can even make the court bigger, right? Where fouls are not necessarily have to be taken out of bounds. You're changing the rules of the game, but you're keeping the game at a faster rate. And what do I mean by that? If I foul you, instead of you grabbing the ball saying foul, and then you go to the sideline and then throw the ball out of bounds, what you do is, like, it was a foul, you count 2 seconds, and then you throw the ball to the next person, and then the game's already going, right? You could say we're like, if you drive baseline and you step out of bounds, you can say we're still live, right? So all that makes the athlete condition more because the dimensions of the court are larger. So I just gave you, I don't know, 3 or 4 examples of like different situations and how you can look at the game of basketball and try to use small-sided games as a guiding factor, right? So are you using the small-sided games from a conditioning standpoint? Or a reconditioning standpoint? Are you using the small-sided games because an athlete is coming back from a lower limb injury, you know, where he probably shouldn't be doing full contact yet? So you might have to start maybe just with a pad or a coach just kind of shadowing in front. So there's different things, right? So
that helps. That helps because
go ahead.
Yeah.
No. Go ahead.
I work with like high school basketball team before, and like in season conditioning always is like pain in the ass. Yeah, so it's hard for me to like program conditioning during the season, but that helps. That helps.
It's interesting because it's like, depending where you are, right? Situations are different, and you know, my situation is different than yours, and your athletes might really like small-sided games, and some of our guys don't. You know, I've met NBA players that really love playing when they're not playing a lot of minutes during the games, so they want to like, I want to play, I need to play. And I also met players that are like, no, like, I'm ready. All I need to do is like really hard court workouts with like a coach that makes me like run up and down and like do layups and shooting and all that. And they don't necessarily want the contact part of small-sided games, right? But funny enough, like, we played soccer in the past, you know, with some of the NBA guys, like, well, not soccer, but like futsal or whatever you want to call it. where we had a soccer ball on the basketball court, and it was very funny to see our big guys trying to move and figure stuff out because it's a hand sport, right? They're shooting basketballs, and they're like using their hands a lot, and now suddenly you're making them use their feet. So there's like a learning, like a motor learning standpoint to it. There's a little bit of like a novelty standpoint to it. And there's also like a small-sided game standpoint to it where, you know, guys are like having to figure out their space and awareness and all that stuff. But then there's also the risk benefit, right? I probably wouldn't play soccer with basketball in season because, you know, maybe they'll like hurt their feet because they kick the ball too hard, or maybe, you know, like they're get really sore the next days because they're not, it's a novel stimulus. They haven't played soccer in a while, right? So like now you got guys that are sore and they got to play in a couple of days, right? And maybe that wasn't the smartest decision. So when I say like we've done soccer, you know, with NBA players, like there was a time and place where we thought it would be appropriate.
That was cool. So last question, and I'm gonna let you go. Okay.
Yep.
So like a few days ago, I talked to like Philip about like force plate, and we mentioned that you do like counter movement jump and like mid thigh pull, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there any like particular like data you're gonna look into when it's like counter movement jump? Let's say probably like modified reactive strength index or like ground contact time, that kind of stuff you're gonna look into.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the most important part about counter movement jump testing is if you truly look at counter movement testing itself, right? It's very vertical. But when you look at the guys on the actual court, very rarely they're jumping like that. For the most part, they're jumping all over the place.
Yeah,
and
sure.
And that's why I'm like, the data is great, and we have so many things to look at. But I think in terms of practicality and really what you should look at is first collect data as much as you can. Right? So if you can make guys jump every day, great. Because now you can create the patterns and you can see where they at, right? And then let's say if they're usually like a 16-inch jump, right? And that day the guy jumps a 12, you know, you're like, yo, what's going on? And you can see that on the force plate results. Then you might know that, you know, their nervous system might be extremely fatigued, you know, and you can try to talk to them and figure out, hey, how was your sleep? Or, you know, did you eat breakfast this morning? Not that that's a direct correlation, but you can start to get the conversation or the ball rolling to figure out what's going on with that athlete, right? But, or you can be like, hey, how you feeling? Like, you know, your jump wasn't the best. And then they're like, yeah, my knees are kind of bothering me, right? So that's a flag. So those are all things that – so I think we use the data more in that regard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Almost like a guiding factor.
Yeah. So instead of like use it as – use the force plate data to tell you how to like – design the training program, it's more like what I just mentioned, like monitoring fatigue, right?
And that's the thing, like you can do it however you see fit because your situation is going to be different than mine, or ours. But the main thing here, it's like the force plate is just another tool, right? And I'm sure you're familiar with Fergus Connolly. He had a quote that he said. It was genius. It was like, you know, we use a car to get to places, right? And you have the dash of the car that tells you where your gas is, the mileage, the speed that you're going, and, you know, how many miles you have left until your tank is empty. But so all that is giving you feedback. But when you're driving the car, you're still looking on the road, and every once in a while you look down to the information on the car, right? And then you look back on the road and back down to the dash and back on the road and back down. And then you start making decisions based on the information you have. What you cannot do is just drive with your eyes on the dash, you know, because then you don't know what's coming on the road. And I think sometimes data and science can get in the way where you're just looking at the data and you're making all these adjustments, but like, why are you changing the program? Is it really truly necessary to change the program based of some reading on the force plate? But there's also moments where you're like, yeah, like the engine light is on, take the car into the shop and fix it, you know? And I think that's where the force plate really helps, which is like, if there's, and research has shown this over time, if let's say, you know, big discrepancy for us is like, are the difference between right and left too great? If they're too great, you know something is going on, you know, usually. So again, just like the small side of games question, like you can look at force plate data in multiple ways, right? You can use it for, you know, athlete fatigue management. You can use it from hopefully a injury prevention standpoint. If you see the discrepancies, you can also see like just pure sheer power, like where is this athlete at? And then you can test them. If you test them in January this year and you also have the same data from January last year, you can look at the outputs and be like, dude, the programming or the sport helped this athlete become more powerful. And literally, like, isn't that really what we want? You know, a lot of people want to get so specific with the data on the force plates, but I'm like, first of all, in basketball, yes, it's very important and we rely on it a lot. But again, the vector is up. In basketball, there's so much of this going on, right? And I think that's kind of like my rant a little bit about, you know, force plate and like, are you using the data to make decision making, or are you kind of like using the data just as a guiding to, you know, raise some flags here and there and then make decisions accordingly to that?
Okay.
Like, I don't think it's the end all be all, but I also think it's a very helpful tool if you look at it with a very candid eye in terms of, you know, this is helping me get somewhere versus this is everything, you know.
For sure.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I said that was the last thing, but I still want to ask like one more question. Is that okay for you?
Yeah, it's my day off. We're good.
Sorry. So
no, you're good. That's what I'm saying. Like, day offs are good because I don't mind talking about strength because that's what I love and that's what we do. So
cool. So you mentioned that for force plate, the vector is only like vertical, but when the players are on the court, there's gonna be like different direct force from different direction, right?
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
How would you like be like how to like try to minimize the injury for our athletes, or how minimize their injury and at the same time be able to like train their, or like be to maximize their like change of direction. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the best way to look at it is just like literally like reverse engineer the sport, right? So grab, I don't know, like a minute clip of a basketball game. Excuse me. pick one player where all you do on the screen is look at him and write down all the movement patterns that you observe, right? So, this guy grabbed a rebound and then did a one dribble, passed it to the point guard, and he sprinted down the lane. So that was a counter movement jump. He grabs the ball. Now he turns and pivots with the ball, and he throws it to the point guard. So that right there. So you have a vertical jump, you have a landing, now you have a pivot depending right or left, right? And then you have like an upper body extension of the pass into probably like a shuffle run that led into a possible sprint, looking over my right shoulder with my left hand up. And then finally, let's say he gets and does a layup. So now you have a single leg jump going or a dunk. And then there's another landing. And then there's a 180 turn where this guy got to sprint back. And as soon as he crosses half court, he does another 180 and then he backpedals the rest, right? So that right there, I'm just kind of making stuff up. But write all this down and then distribute and sprinkle those movements into your training block, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like putting all these, like, let's say take the note where you just mentioned and put on like put in warm up.
No, exactly. I mean, you can have a day where your warm up focus on lateral agilities, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just really up to you, like you the driver of that. So guys don't need to know that today we're going to work on lateral agility or whatever. But you can literally say, all right, we have a drill today. We're going to go from this cone to that cone laterally. Don't cross your feet, just shuffle or whatever. Or go, 2 times lateral shuffle into a sprint and then into a back pedal. Now right there, you're getting some good speed. You're getting some good activation. You're getting some good intensity. And it's a very basketball-specific movement, right? Which the last part of your warm-up can be the specific part. So there you go.
Cool. So that's like all the questions I have for today.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate it.
No, I really love it.
Hopefully it helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot. I mean, especially for the like mid-rep pause. I really love that. Really love the change of direction in the weight room. Really love that. And also the way you like answer the force split question. I think that's not only gonna be helping me. There's gonna be helping a lot of coaches in Taiwan.
That's good. That's awesome.
So appreciate it. Thank you for the time, man. And
of course.
Hopefully, if it's possible, I really love to like invite you to do a second one. Okay.
Okay, of course. Anytime. Let me know.
Okay. Appreciate it. See you, brother.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate it. Take it easy.
See you. Bye.
Bye.